Right, well, hello everybody, and very pleased to see you again. I hope you've had some good experiences at county cricket, either watching it on stream or attending in person. And I'm very pleased to say we have a very interesting character tonight. You know who it is, but obviously someone who's changed sports in many ways, or maybe you could say gone back to his roots, actually. So I'll introduce him in a second, but it's also good to have Simon Mann back after his odyssey around the west coast of America. We've got to hear about that in a bit. Simon, how are you?
I'm very well. I don't know if we do necessarily need to hear all about it, but it was a nice holiday, chance to get away, first time for a few years. I think we want to hear from Rob, don't we?
We want to hear from Rob. So welcome to the world's best cricket club, very modestly named, to Rob Andrews, 71 appearances for England in rugby, of course, and also played his part in the cricket world, both with Cambridge University and Yorkshire. And actually he has in cricket he's achieved one thing that I haven't. He's got a first class 100 against Nottinghamshire. So welcome to Rob Andrew. Thanks very much for joining. You are of course now Chief Executive of Sussex as well, for your sins. How do you, simple question, compare and contrast Director of Rugby at Newcastle with CEO of Sussex CCC?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. Nice to see the two Simons and nice to see everybody, some on the screen at the moment. A very interesting question, and actually, I thought rugby was bad enough around politics and challenges between the governing body and the club game, and how the international players sort of fit into it all, and the complexities of scheduling. Rugby spent 25 years since going professional trying to work it out, and it's only been professional 25 years. I've now realized that cricket has probably spent about 300 years trying to work it out, and is still trying to find that nirvana position, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So very complex, and been made more complex in the last couple of years, obviously with the advent of the 100 as well. So it's a really complex landscape that has got much more complex over the last couple of years, and over the last probably 15 years with the advent of T20 and how much white ball cricket there now is.
Were you, as a player, both either rugby or cricket, were you ever someone who wanted to run the game? Were you someone who sort of saw yourself in an administrative type role?
No, never. Really, I sort of, those that are old enough on the call to remember, all of my rugby was in the amateur era, mid 80s to mid 90s. We all had day jobs. We had, as some of you will recall, we had a mixed bag of players from various backgrounds in the England rugby team: Army, Air Force, police, solicitor, doctor, surveyor, lawyer, yeah. All sorts. And it made for a great dressing room. It made for a lot of fun, a lot of life skills that were brought into the dressing room and taken onto the pitch from your day job. And then rugby went professional in '95, which was just when I stopped playing. And completely out of the blue, I got an opportunity to go to Newcastle when the football club, which was owned by Sir John Hall, was about to buy Alan Shearer to make him the most expensive footballer in the world in 1996 at 15 million. You don't get a right leg for 15 million these days. And I went to Newcastle to run and sort of play a little bit towards the end of my career. But no, I'd never any ambition to coach or manage or go into administration. I was a sort of career surveyor, really. I spent 10 years in the West End of London whilst playing my rugby with Wasps. Played a little bit of cricket, club cricket, after I left uni, and then that sort of drifted away. And I've sort of fallen into it, if I'm honest. Newcastle, then the RFU, and now Sussex.
I mean, just quickly going back to those rugby days, how amateur was rugby? I mean, you all got sort of bizarre payments, I suppose, for different, like you had sponsors or something like that, did you? I mean, It must have been quite a complicated arrangement.
Well, no, we didn't really. That was the whole problem to a degree, and that's why, in the end, the game went professional, because the players, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere, the New Zealanders, then the South Africans, when they came back into rugby in 1992, as they did with cricket coming out of the apartheid years, the players started to effectively demand, that this can't carry on, where we're not getting paid, we're having to leave, work, and people were not getting paid to miss work. There genuinely wasn't any money around. People thought there were brown envelopes, but there just wasn't. There was a little bit, one or two places, but honestly, there wasn't much money. If any, there wasn't really any around, to be honest. And that's where the pressure came for the game to go professional.
Actually, it's funny, isn't it? Because you mentioned how cricket had 300 years to try and get this thing together. You're absolutely right, because there were professionals in the 1700s. Actually, you're the county you're now involved with, Sussex, was one of the foundations of cricket, professional cricket especially. And there's famous games in 1708, times like that, where the Earl of Goodwood put together, a team which was a few professionals from local clubs and a few of his mates, and they called it Sussex. It's quite interesting, but they were professional players even in those days, actually. And I think cricket's always sort of struggled with this concept. Simon, sorry, I probably interrupted you there. I know you had a question sort of related to all this.
Oh no, I was just going to ask Rob. Pound for pound, pro rata, you were probably a better rugby player than you were a cricketer. I mean, you played for England, for goodness sake, at rugby. Which sport did you prefer to play? Which of those sports do you sort of love the most, if you like, in a playing sense, really, rather than necessarily a watching sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. I probably at school enjoyed playing cricket more. My rugby I was okay at school. I played county rugby. I didn't play international schoolboy rugby or cricket. It was in those days when Cambridge and Oxford still had a reasonably serious part to play in the development of sport around rugby and cricket. There weren't pathways, there weren't academies. You had county selection and then England selection on the back of that. I didn't have any of that in either sport. Rugby just took off at Cambridge quicker than the cricket did. There's a reason for that. It's because I wasn't very good at cricket. I loved it, but as by the end of my final year at university, I was actually playing for England in the Five Nations. So my final year at university, I played in a varsity match in December of '84, played in the Five Nations of 1985, and then captained the cricket team in the summer of 1985 as well. So I'm still trying to work out how I came away with a degree, to be honest. But no, look, I did love my cricket. I enjoyed the sort of individual challenge of batting, I suppose. I was a pretty dour batsman who enjoyed the challenge of trying to fend off the bowlers with a new ball.
What was more terrifying, facing a county quick bowler or facing, some number 8 running at you at fly half, peeling off the back of the scrum or whatever?
Yeah, they were both very interesting. I managed to upset Garth LaRue one day at Fenners when I'm playing Sussex. We're up at Fenners. I also played for Yorkshire Twos against Lancashire Twos in Doncaster, of all places, on quite a dark late afternoon when a certain Patrick Patterson was playing for Lancashire second team, which actually goodness knows what he was doing playing for Lancashire second team, and goodness knows what I was doing playing for Yorkshire second team. And then obviously the other, I finished my rugby career just as it went pro, and then obviously the Giants sort of came into the game, but we managed to run into Jonah Lomu. Some will remember Jonah, who sadly Jonah's no longer with us. He passed away in 2015. But he was a modern day professional playing in the amateur era, which we always felt was a bit unfair, really. He was like the big kid in the playground, just running around squashing everybody. So I was a fly half, though, so I managed to keep out of the way of most of them. That was my job, was to get out of the way. That was the forward's job, to do all the heavy lifting.
The fly halves always were the ones with the clean knees, weren't they? Kind of avoiding those massive tackles. I once interviewed Jonah Lomu, actually, and I noticed his arms were the size of my thighs.
He was enormous. He was absolutely. He was a gentle giant, as are a lot of the Islanders. I was lucky enough to play against and with Inga Twigger-Mahler, who was Inga the winger. Who sadly he passed only a few weeks ago, in the same week that Shane Warne did, at the same age. So it puts lots of things into perspective. And they were gentle giants, lovely, lovely people off the field, until they crossed the white line, and then you threw a rugby ball at them, and somebody either ran at them or they ran at you. They just wanted to run straight over the top of you and bury you in the ground.
Just quick question about sort of rugby and cricket. You were obviously a fantastic rugby player and a good cricketer as well, and you had sort of control over, the game. Now you're in a chief executive position, as you were with rugby as well, in a sense, and you don't have control so much. Is it quite hard managing that? Is it the transformation, the transition from playing where you are, roughly in control of things, to actually having to cede control to the players on the field, and even running a club where you're trying to retain control, but the team has a life of its own, if you like? Is that quite hard to deal with?
Yeah, really hard. Absolute nightmare, to be honest. In terms of, because I actually coached at Newcastle. I was player, then player coach, then director of rugby, and then I've kept moving further and further away from the coaching and management side of the game. Often I've thought about it for that very reason, Simon, that I found it really difficult, particularly being the coach at Newcastle on the sideline. You just have no control. I mean, you obviously set things up, and you've got your tactics and your team selection, and there's so much you can do. But then obviously when they cross the line, so I found that really quite difficult, and I've openly admitted that. And I think even now, being even one step further removed from the playing side of it and the result, it's still really quite hard, because sport's so emotional and in a sense so opinionated, which is why we love it so much. But so much rests on those two letters, W and L, and they sort of dominate sport, really, from a fan point of view, and an administrator and a coach. And a W is much, much better than an L. Obviously, you can get a D as well. You get more Ds in cricket for draw than perhaps you do in rugby and football. And sometimes a draw in cricket can actually feel like a W.
So, I mean, we should talk about your role as chief executive at Sussex. You've been doing it for a long time now, so you know the sort of ins and outs of the county game. You know the politics. You know the people. Do you have a very clear idea about how the game should be run? I just don't mean your club, but I mean the county game and how it should relate to the international game. I mean, it's such a hot topic at the moment, and you say everyone's got an opinion. Do you have very clear ideas? Are you still swayed? Do you still have to be, think I can make my mind up about this? I'm not sure about this, or do you have, do you go into meetings and argue a very specific line because you're passionate about a particular way of doing things? And and what is that way? What is that sort of idea really, or that central idea that you might have about the way the game should be run?
Yeah, again, it's a great question, and I've been at Sussex 5 years now, and I actually arrived just as the decision around the 100 had effectively been signed off, or the new competition. Of course, remember it was a T20 competition when it was first signed off, and then it morphed into the 100, and we're in the middle of this debate as we speak. COVID has come along as well, which has sort of added its two penneth towards that debate, and we've only had one season of the 100. We've got the plethora of white ball, red ball debate going on, and if I'm honest, no, I don't have the answer, because I'm not sure that anybody actually can have the answer. I think it will morph into a new version of the answer, because that's what cricket does. And that's not a criticism. I think cricket actually does a really good job of, and if you look over history, and you guys will know a lot more than I do, I've sort of followed the history of cricket, but cricket's been dying for, again, about the last 300 years. It dies every decade, but it doesn't. It finds a way of morphing into the next decade, morphing into the next bit of what it's going to look like. And it is really difficult. And anybody that thinks they've got the answer, I think they're wrong. I don't think you can find the perfect solution to what is a very complex situation at the moment. And there's a lot of talk about red ball reset. Well, there's a lot of jargon around at the moment. I'd like to know what some of it actually means. There's been a focus on white ball cricket, let's be honest, and actually the pendulum has swung, and it's swung too far. And that's often what happens in these situations. And now everybody's going, oh, actually, we've let the pendulum go too far. We've become pretty good at white ball cricket. We've won a World Cup. We've got a new competition. There's more and more franchise leagues around the world. A lot of players are heading off and making loads of money. And then you expect them to come back and play red ball cricket when you haven't used a red ball for 6 months, and wonder why they can't do it. Well, it's pretty obvious why they can't do it. So I think this rebalancing act is a challenge, and the 100 is in the middle of it. And so, arguably, the ECB have created one thing which has now caused a problem with one of our other assets, and we're waking up to that fact and now trying to swing the pendulum back. But where it swings back to and what it looks like when it does swing back, it's everybody seems to have the answer already, when the process hasn't even started. So that's, look, there'll be millions of different answers on this call.
Yeah,
18 first-class counties trying to clearly there's an element of self-protection around that as well, because we're individual businesses. We feel we've got a big part to play. Without the counties, the ECB, from my mind, the counties produce the players, the counties have the grounds that all cricket is played on, and it's for the ECB to serve the game in the best interest of the game, and that's what's going to be difficult to sort out over the next 6 months.
I mean, you in a way have been an interesting study over the last sort of couple of years, because you've lost some leading players in a way, who've obviously wanted to move on to first division teams or whatever, and yet it's given you the opportunity, which you've grabbed, to blood quite a lot of youngsters, and they're now starting to produce, some of them. I know you haven't won a match yet, but 2 scores of over 500 is pretty impressive. What's the feeling in Sussex about, amongst the community, the members, maybe the committee, about its kind of status in the area?
I think the status of cricket in Sussex is very strong in terms of the whole cricket community. As many of you know on this call, as many counties are. Sussex is a real cricket county. It's got loads of schools, loads of clubs. We have very strong women and girls programs, disability programs. We have historically produced good young players who then go on to England. Obviously, that creates and that's the other dichotomy we've all got in the game, is that part of our role is to produce cricketers at all levels, one of which is to produce players to go on to play international cricket. And one of our aims is for all of our youngsters is for them to have the ambition to play international cricket. You have to have that. I was lucky enough in another sport to fulfill a dream, which was actually quite a late developing dream, to be honest. I wasn't thinking of playing rugby or cricket for England, at the age of 15, 16, 17, or even earlier, which a lot of kids are in modern day sport. But I was able to fulfill that dream. And we will always strive, for the next one off the block. Who is it? Is it Tom Haynes? I don't know. We'll find out this year, next year, maybe never. We'll see. But, we have helped produce international cricketers. Obviously, from a Sussex point of view, the problem is you do that and then you never see the player again. But that's the way cricket has to be. And we all have to accept that, for the benefit of the whole game and the way the game is structured, we can't be like football where all your best players play for you and your country. Rugby has a slightly different balance where the players play a reasonable amount for their clubs, but they do go missing for quite big blocks. Cricket, if you're an international cricketer, you just go missing full stop, pretty much. And then occasionally, if you're lucky, you get them back for the odd game if the ECB allow it. So that is, a fundamental part of modern day cricket since central contracts came in, since in a sense the explosion of international cricket. You go back 20 or 30 years, England players played a fair bit of county cricket. Now your modern England player doesn't really play for your county very much at all. So that is just we have to accept that, and there's nothing else you can do. It's just the nature of the beast.
You mentioned young Haynes, your captain. He's only 23. How good is he? That's for other people to judge that, really, not for me. But if you look at the fact that he was a leading run scorer in all county cricket last year when we were in the conferences, so it wasn't first or second division. He played against Lancashire and Yorkshire, got 155 in the opening game at Old Trafford last year. He's obviously, he's scoring runs, which is what you want your opening batsman to do, isn't it? So yeah, look, I can't make a judgment on that, but what I can say is that with a lot of our young players, we do think we've got some young players. We absolutely will do everything we can for them to play international cricket, because it's got to be their goal.
And actually, you've got a very good coaching staff now, haven't you, as well? I mean, it's interesting that quite a lot of the former Sussex players are sort of gravitating back to coaching the team. So there is a sort of family sort of feel about it, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, we've looked, again, it's really interesting when you go into sports administration roles, which I've sort of ended up in, having gone through playing and then coaching. You realize that getting that management team, that coaching team the structure right is actually really important. You know, I always remember Ian McGeechan, who many of you will know, played for Lions, coached Scotland, coached 3 Lions tours. He talks an awful lot about chemistry of the coaching team, and getting that right in all sports is really important. You know, we've seen perhaps some undoing at international level, maybe for some of those reasons, without being critical or personalizing things, and it's a difficult thing to do, but we've sort of focused hard on that over the last sort of 18 months since Dizzy was with us, and he then decided to go back to South Australia. We tried that. I think we both found that, it was a 6 month on, 6 month off role, and I'm not sure that worked for either of us, which we would both admit. So yeah, we've tried to sort of get the right experience in, particularly with young players. Young players want to be well coached, because if you've got ambition, you have your own thoughts on things, but good coaching in all sports is really, really important, particularly for young players.
I can see that.
Yours, is it time to open it up? And,
sure. I mean, just one more
questions?
question from me. One more quick question from me. What, as chief executive, what keeps you awake at night?
Well, how many runs or wickets we're going to get tomorrow up at New Road? Because I'm very competitive, and I find, match day, you just want the team to do well for obvious reasons.
So you've got the stream on in the corner of your office or room or whatever all the time, have you?
No, I tend not to watch it because it drives me nuts. So I tend just to check in every couple of hours to see what the score is. Otherwise, it just does my head in. No, I think the key, look, at the moment, I think it's and particularly over the last couple of years with COVID, it's just making sure the club is financially in good shape. I mean, that ultimately is chief exec. That is probably my number one priority, is to make sure that, Sussex is a business. Sports clubs are now businesses. And we have to make sure that we are in good shape financially. As we've said earlier, cricket's been around a very long time. Sussex has been around since 1839. Has played at Hove. This is our 150th year of actually playing on that square at Hove. They moved there in 1872. The legacy and the history of county cricket clubs is enormous in this country. And, I think it's absolutely right that all 18 will fight tooth and nail to ensure that all 18 survive as first-class county institutions who are also professional sports, delivering a huge amount of good for cricket across each of their counties, which I think they do.
Okay. Good answer. I'll talk to you more about your 150th, I think, tomorrow on the phone. I've got an idea. But anyway, we'll leave that for now. A business idea, I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll feed that into you tomorrow. Yes, Simon. Let's invite our members, our long-suffering members listening to us waffling on. Let's get them involved.
Yeah, there's time for questions. Right, I've got the list here. Niraj is going to go first.
So we've got a multinational membership here, Rob.
Brilliant.
Niraj is in Mumbai.
Oh, wow.
Hi guys. Hi, Rob. Hi, Simon.
Hello.
Hi, Rob. Coming from Mumbai, my question is going to be on cricket, not rugby. So, Cheteshwar Pujara. I mean, a big fan of Cheteshwar Pujara, and he's in a downhill in the Indian cricket team actually, and he's lost his position. He's got age against him. His running between the wickets is really bad. He's not a great fielder. All these things are going against him now, and he's not getting the runs. So, I mean, was he desperate to take county cricket to prove to the Indian board, or Sussex as a team or a club was very much excited to get him on board? And who went first? I mean, if you can share that. and why Sussex, why was Sussex so keen on Pujara and not other batsmen? So why Cheteshwar Pujara of all the other batsmen around the world?
Well, hang on a second. Let me just. Somebody's turned the music on in my living room, which is not very helpful. The kids in the kitchen have disappeared.
You can go away and talk to them if you want.
It's all going on. I heard the smoke alarm go off as well earlier, so I think the kitchen might be on fire.
You want to go and see? Go away and see.
No, it's fine. It's gone. It's gone. It's all good. Look, a really good question. He's clearly a world-class batsman. There's no question about that. We wanted some experience into what is a young side. We blooded a lot of young players last year. At times we had an average age of 20, 21 last year. So we were looking from a batting point of view to get some real experience into the side. Sometimes these things just come together. Obviously, there's a whole chatter amongst directors of cricket and agents. Cricket is a very small world around, agents and who's available, who's thinking of coming over, who isn't. Clearly, we had to wait until the IPL auction. That's another thing that we have to wait for before people can make moves. He obviously was left out of those 2 test matches. There's a test in England against India. The 5th test from last year is going to be played here. I'm sure he wants to get back into the Indian squad. He wants to come here and score runs in England so that he's ready for that. We wanted an experienced batsman, and the 2 things came together brilliantly, and we're delighted. And he's only been here 10 days, but he's an amazing bloke. He wants to help the youngsters, and he got 200 the other day. So if he could get 200 tomorrow, I'll be very happy.
Make sure you make him run on the field. And I hope his running between the wickets improves.
He doesn't need to run between the wickets if he scores 200, though, does he? He can just get them in boundaries. I mean, he was an extraordinary. He's an extraordinarily brave batsman, actually. I mean, he took the blows he took against Australia in that final test in Brisbane were amazing, actually, weren't they? I mean, it was like a punch bag. But he knew he was vulnerable if he tried to play at those balls, so he just let them hit him. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a quite so sort of masochistic performance.
No, but he's almost, in a way, he's almost a throwback, isn't he, to a batsman that just wants to occupy the crease, and that's, crikey, that's what we've been arguing about that for the last 2 or 3 years in the game. We've got some young batsmen who we think are talented. Haynes is one of them. Tom Clark is another one who got his debut 100 against Notts in the first game. He's only 20. We've got 17-year-olds. Dan Ibrahim, who was the youngest player to get 50 in the county championship last year. But you want them to learn to occupy the crease. And I think this goes back to one of the challenges that I think the game has got. And one of the things that I personally think the game will separate into white ball and red ball cricketers. It's getting there. I think it's getting there now. I think in 5 years' time it will have gone, because the skill sets will get wider and wider, in my opinion, and the marketplace will determine where the players choose to go. And you can't beat the market, so I wouldn't bother trying. I'd just let the players choose what they want to do and let their skill sets determine what they want to do. So, good example, there's 90 odd players playing in the 100 in this country in the summer. There's another 350 players who in a sense, we're almost saying, well, don't do anything. Play a bit of 50 over cricket. I would play red ball cricket all through the summer, because just let the younger generation who want to be Test cricketers learn to be Test cricketers. They might go across to white ball at the end of their careers. Some of them might go very early because they have that skill set. Well, they're going to go anyway. So to the PSL, Big Bash, the Caribbean Premier League, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. The big aim, obviously, is to get the big one at the IPL, because that's life-changing. We're not going to stop that. So I wouldn't fight it, to be honest. I'd just let it happen.
Before I get another question there, Rob, but is the money there to reward the red ball players who, if you like, stay and stick with red ball cricket? And that is one of the concerns, isn't it? The money will move away completely from red ball cricket. Well,
it depends how you fund it, doesn't it? And if you still fund the centrally contracted Test player, and if you leave enough money in the game and make the red ball game still important, look, the reality is that not everybody can play in the IPL. Not everybody can play in the 100. And not everybody is going to have that skill set. I know the youngsters want to develop those skill sets, and they will. But my view is there'll still be more than enough players, in a sense, who either don't have the skill set to play the white ball to the level that will be required, and they will recognise that. And hopefully, if the game has given them that really good grounding, they will realise, actually, do you know what? I've got a much better chance of opening the batting in Test cricket than I have of getting an IPL contract. I just think there'll be less and less players who can do both. Is my personal view. I might be wrong, but
no, I think it's two separate sports almost becoming.
And I think the other thing is I think it is, and I think those skills are getting wider and wider apart, for good reason. I mean, some of the skills in the white ball, some of the shots they play, but it's hard to come back and then try and bat opening the batting against the red ball with a Duke's ball in May or June. And also the other thing, which I think is a factor, is the plethora of these white ball tournaments. And players are already, I know COVID, we've got to take COVID into account, but players will just get fatigued, both physically and mentally. And I think we've seen quite a lot of that in the last period, and that's only going to get worse, I think.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Let's move on. I think Rob, let's go to Rob next.
Well, Rob was our entree into Rob.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
You need to unmute yourself, Rob. That's it.
Evening, Rob. How you doing?
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Nice to chat again. Mine's really a two-parter. Do you have aspirations to go into the England, admin setup, or would you go further, or would you go back to rugby if the chance came about?
I haven't planned any of my jobs, and I have no intention of trying to plan what's next now. I love Sussex, and I'm enjoying being involved in cricket.
Oh yeah, no, I saw you there, obviously pitch side with a big smile on your face, so soaking it all in.
We must have been having a good day that day, because sometimes I'm not smiling.
Well, yes, it was the first day versus Notts.
Oh yeah, we did have a good day that day. Yeah.
Yes, it was nice, and then the wicket fell just as us two were having a selfie, so it went well. But no, that was it. Just one, if you had any aspirations to sort of take your role into the England sort of setup in a few years' time if it came up.
No, I live for the moment.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rob. Ian Wigston. You're on mute, Ian, as well.
Rob, hi, good evening. And
hi.
but you're mentioning about Ho's 150th anniversary. Hove was actually the first county ground I visited in, I think it was 1962. We had grandparents down at Worthing. So
Wow.
Happy 60 years ago, crikey. You were talking about coaching earlier on very eloquently. I'm a business coach and work with schools and young people on their development. From what sports do you think cricket can learn the most about getting coaching right? Is that rugby or is it somewhere else, do you think? And what do you think are the lessons to be learned to improve coaching?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My sort of own personal experience of coaching was obviously in rugby mostly, and it was, I had a sort of a closed skill, which was the kicking, and obviously then had a team environment where there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of interaction with other people. So there's lots of different skill acquisitions that you need there, and I think what coaches need to do is just explore lots of different things. But one thing that I'm maybe a little bit old school in this area as well. I think sometimes people can try to be too clever with coaching, and actually, I think we all know that if you find something that works for whatever the skill is that you're looking to achieve as an individual and as a team, then sort of don't tinker too much with what works for you. And I think that with both cricket and rugby and football and all modern sports, really, probably driven from America, is that now you sometimes feel that you've got as many coaches as you've got players. So the poor bloke that's trying to manage the whole thing, he's got a team of coaches to manage as well as a team of players, and I think that's been a real problem for, I've seen it in rugby close hand, and that potentially see it a little bit in cricket as well. Is get the best specialists you can for the skill that you're trying to develop. And give the individual confidence, and that confidence comes from knowing that you're being well coached, and then you can take that. If you then see that going into practice, that helps you mentally, and it becomes a virtuous circle of the mental and the technical plus the physical, whatever's required for that, actually all working together. If you and I think that for me is the sort of holy grail of coaching.
No, I think you're right. And we talk a lot about coachability. So there are some clients that are more coachable than others. There are probably cricketers and rugby players that are more coachable than others, but equally not tinkering is a key attribute, as you say. Thank you.
I think it's, the other thing, I find this whole area quite interesting, because I was on the receiving end of some outstanding coaching with a guy called Dave Allred, who was my kicking coach with England, who then became Johnny Wilkinson's kicking coach. And I just know what good coaching does for you as a player, particularly in the white hot heat of battle on an international rugby field, or whether that's an international cricket field or whatever. And therefore, getting all of that right is so important. Really is.
What about relating that? What about the mental side? And firstly, how much mental coaching did you have? How much psychological help, sports psychological help, did you have as a player? And how important is that now for the modern cricketer?
Yeah, not a lot, Simon, to be honest. It was starting to come in towards the end of my amateur playing career. and then it sort of came in a little bit more. And obviously now in most sports, it's there much more so than it probably ever has been. I think that it all goes together. So I don't think it's just having a good psych coach. If you've then got a rubbish technical coach and you're being coached all the wrong things, so when you bowl you can't land it, when you bat you can't hit it, doesn't matter how good your psych coach is if it's not actually working together. So making sure that they all come together for that individual player. And I think that's the other thing as well, is really understanding the individual, and making sure that they start to become comfortable. And the other challenge in that is as a coach, you want the player to take responsibility, and you've got to show them the way and then guide them. But in the end, to be ultimately successful at the very highest level, the players clearly have to take ownership, and it's trying to get that balance right so that they're taking ownership of the right things. They still need the guidance, I believe, but you do want them to sort of start to understand themselves as well, what they might or might not be doing right or wrong, and then working with the coach. You don't want the player to be totally reliant on the coach. It's a really tough coaching. I think is really difficult.
Is it sort of almost a case for now saying that actually, you say about kind of things needing to work together, so actually a technical coach needs to have a bit of an understanding of the mental side of the game as well? I mean, and then they can put the two together.
Absolutely. And they will, most coaches see themselves as amateur psychs anyway. And it's just making sure that it's all actually, it's working in harmony and pulling in the right direction, rather than you can actually make it worse for the player, because the player talks to 3 different people, gets 3 different responses, and then doesn't know what day of the week it is. Particularly at the highest level, when you're under enormous pressure.
What just can you give us an example, Rob, of what Dave Allred?
Dave Allred.
Yeah. Dave Allred. Yeah. What can you give us an example? I was really fascinated by it. You said he was a brilliant coach. What can you give us an example of one thing that he did or helped you with, or that sort of made such a massive difference?
Yeah, he absolutely proved to me that getting the technical bit right, which meant that and we did a lot of work on this, months and months, hours and hours, which gave me the confidence then that I knew that if I got the technical bit right, which I proved in training, that would carry through into the game. So therefore, I wasn't worried in the game about the score or whatever was going on in the game. I was purely worried about focusing on some technical things that I understood myself. If I was making slight mistakes, I could self-correct, because I understood what it was that I was doing wrong, and I knew if I got it absolutely right. And therefore, what that did to me mentally was enormous, because I was able to I knew that if I got the process right, the outcome would be what I wanted. And the outcome clearly was for the damn ball to go through the post, whatever time of the game or score was. But if you think like that, you probably would never even get to kick the ball. So that's where I think the technical and the mental stuff absolutely goes hand in glove.
Actually, I did a session with him once when he was working with Johnny Wilkinson. I went to this session, and it was in a bizarre place. It was in Finsbury Circus in the City of London, in a grassy bit of the city, and he showed what he did with a lot of his subjects, which was plant the ball down and obviously get the angle right. This is for a conversion or a penalty or whatever.
Yeah.
Get the angle of the ball exactly right, but then focus on the L of Gilbert, the manufacturer, and also look at. He said he talked to Johnny about, or maybe you, about focusing on a person in the stand behind the posts, not only a person, but their newspaper that they're reading or their hat or whatever. And that's what you're kind of aiming at, a particular point on the ball to make contact, and a tiny little target quite a long way behind the post to aim at as well. So the detail that he had, which I suppose if you look at the detail in that amount of sort of forensic level, that shuts out the enormity of Twickenham with 80,000 people screaming at you.
Yeah, it does, and that's where you need to get to in those moments. And I'm sure that as a bowler, you have to deliver the ball into a certain place. You've got different things you might want to do with it. Same with the batsman. The only important ball is the next one. And it's just having that confidence in your technique and your physical positioning in order to help you grow in confidence mentally.
He was quite groundbreaking, actually, wasn't he?
He was in rugby, absolutely.
And then I think he worked in golf, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, he did. I think he spends most of his time working in golf now. He's done a bit of Aussie rules and rugby league. Yeah.
Great, really interesting. Paul has been waiting very patiently. Paul Morley, good evening.
Who is a coach, by the way.
He's got his Lions top on as well, by the looks of it.
I do. That was completely unscheduled, unscripted Lions top. It was just what I pulled out of the drawer today. But my question very much follows on from what you've just been talking about, in that the psychology of sport and the pressure situations we saw at the weekend with Marcus Smith, and that position that you play, Rob, and obviously the job that Marcus does as place kicker, probably more so that position and that role in any team sport I can think of, where one individual has the opportunity to get the W or the L, as you say, more so than you think about cricket. It's confrontational. There's a batter and a bowler involved, where in that moment where you have a chance to kick the winning points, it's all about you. If you're in Marcus's shoes, the next time you're in that situation, how much does that failure go through your mind, and how much does it play on your mind? So that's the question I have about the follow-up. I'm going to get mercifully killed by everybody else for asking two questions.
No, you've already won the Garth Crooks Award this week. I'll elaborate shortly.
Very much the second question is a very quick one. You mentioned Haynes earlier. If he gets picked for England and goes away in the first test and does really well, and Rob Key phones you up and says we want him for the rest of the summer, what compensation do you guys at Sussex get for that?
Well, the second one is reasonably straightforward, because there's a whole process of compensation if players are taken away when they're not centrally contracted. So that's just across all counties, and it's nice to have the money, but obviously we don't have the runs anymore. He'd be scoring his runs for the national cause, which is also great. Just like Joffre's gone off and we haven't seen him for 2 years. And that's what I was saying earlier. So that's fine. It's the way the system works. And nobody would be more delighted than me or everybody in Sussex if Tom Haynes is doing that for the rest of the summer in a test match for England. The first bit, Marcus, I would think, and I don't know for sure, but I would think that Marcus will know why he missed the kick. And that's the most important thing, is for him to know what actually went slightly wrong. And if he does that, the next kick, it won't matter to him, because, and that's where you sort of get to, he's a very, very good goal kicker. The very best now at 80, 90%. And as long as he understands what little technical mistake he will have made with missing that kick, then that helps him next time and helps him in training to just get to that moment where you're trying to kick the perfect kick every single time.
Cool, thank you.
Great. Right, I think we've got one more members' question. We've been going in nearly an hour, actually. So one more, and Rajiv, I think might be new to our club. I'm not sure if that's true or not, because I haven't been here for a couple of weeks. I've been away. But hello, Rajiv. What's your question?
Hi, Simon. Thanks. Yeah, and I think I've only joined in the last month or so, so fairly new. But yeah, great to have you on, Rob. I'd say.
Where are you, Rajiv?
I'm in London.
Okay, right.
Central London. So yeah, I'd say Rob, rugby and cricket are probably my two favourite sports. And I think the good thing about having you on tonight, I think one of my earliest rugby memories was a certain drop goal at a World Cup quarter-final in 1995. And yeah, no, it was a great day. So good to have you on. But I didn't get to join at the start of the talk, the call this evening, but it was probably asked about Rob Key becoming the England MD, taking on the England MD role. And obviously you had a similar role with England Rugby. And I know that you were sort of in for a lot of criticism, perhaps, and I think that may have been a particular sour journalist at the Times that may have wanted your role at England that you took on at that time. But I was wondering if there was one sort of main tip that you could give Rob, what would that be and why?
Yeah, look, I wish him very well. I think he's got a very tough gig. I think all of these gigs in sort of international sport are tough. I'd only have one piece of advice, and I'm not for giving advice in these roles, but make the right appointments.
Yeah,
that's the main job. Whichever position you are in management, make the right selection. So I would always go, so it's all about the right people in the right jobs doing the right thing. So if you're the coach, pick the right team. If you're the MD, pick the right coaches. If you're the chief exec, pick the right MD. Because that's what it comes down to. Very, very easy thing for me to say. And I don't know what the answer is to the question. That is now Rob's job. But I was in the firing line, and they're not easy things to get right by any stretch of the imagination. And even when you think you've got it right and you've done all the right things, it still may not work out, because that's the nature of the brute that is international sport. And that's what we're going to find out over the next few months and years as to what this next phase of English cricket looks like. And it's going to be, we're all fascinated because we all love it so much, just in the way that, Eddie's coming under pressure and some stick from England Rugby point of view to see if he gets it right in the next 18 months going to the next World Cup, because it's tough. It's what we expect. You look at the pressure that Gareth Southgate must have been under over the last two, major tournaments, World Cup in 2018 and then the Euros. He's done an unbelievable job, most successful that England have been in football, and still people aren't happy. That's why the top level sport, I think, is getting tougher and tougher. So yeah, I shall wish him well and watch on with a great deal of interest.
What do you think, Rajiv? What would you like to see Rob Key do? What would be on your priority list?
Yeah, and it's a tricky one. I think the whole idea of, do you go captain first and then coach, or coach then captain? Because I think everyone's suggesting go captain first then coach. But in my view, then it's a slight recipe for disaster, because if you've then got the coach that comes in and says, well, no, I disagree with that, I suppose you can change the mind and they can change the captain. But I think the coach is the immediate thing that he needs to focus on, and then the captain afterwards. And maybe you do the interim captain role, perhaps.
Interestingly, when Strauss was setting up the one-day side in 2015, he appointed Morgan first as, you know, official captain, and then sought a coach who saw the captain as the main man. So Bayliss, one of his sort of fundamental, this is part of our documentary actually, that Strauss says, you know, I wanted a coach who recognized the captain was the leader and he was just the support act. And that's partly why Bayliss got the job. So I don't know whether Rob Key will have the same approach. But I mean, just to sort of pick up on that your answer, Rob, right, you mentioned the word right, get the right person, get the right appointments. What is right? I mean, is it about performance? Is it only now about performance? Or, you know, at club level, your county level, I mean, could it be about, you know, an entertainment and you know, kind of drawing more people into the ground because you want more members, or is it only about results?
It's a really good question. I think club and country are two different things, and depends on where you are as a club in your cycle and the finances that you might have, and you might be in a rebuilding transition phase as a club entity. I think international sport is very simple. It's about winning the next match, because that's what you should be doing if you're England rugby, England cricket, England football. The national team, yes, there's a bit of rebuilding and you might reshape things towards the next World Cup, but I think there's also a danger that people start using that as an excuse to transition through the next 4 years and forget, you know, international sport is about winning the next international. That's the very top of the game. It's not a development team. The development teams are the under 23s or the you know, the Lions or the county network. You know, it's not a development team when you play in the first test in the Ashes. Well, it shouldn't be.
Are you a big fan of the World Test Championship, and should they have it for rugby?
Well, they are trying to put something in place in rugby. You know, look, I think competition around the World Test Championship is the right thing to do. I think it's a challenge because it's flawed, isn't it, in terms of who you play, when you play, how many test matches you play. So it'll never be perfect, but yeah, you should have something that is competitive with international sport all the time, because that's why, you know, why people go out onto the field at the top level. It's and I just think, I think it's back to where we came in on the conversation. The reset as well, not the reset, but the move, the pendulum has just gone too far in terms of the sort of the white ball priority. We've got to find a way of prioritizing both, and that is where the game has got to find some, you know, some very interesting solutions over the next 6 months. So
equilibrium is what we seek, and I suppose in a way the World Test Championship is a sort of barometer of where we are on that scale.
Yeah, near the bottom.
At the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you. I think as you're almost out of light.
I know. I've just realised that it actually doesn't feel so bad in here, but I have got.
Don't worry.
I'm saving electricity.
Very good.
I'm a Yorkshireman.
Very noble. Simon, have you got any final sort of?
No, I mean, no. I mean, Rob's answered the question. I mean, my point is that the English game is well resourced enough to be good at red ball and white ball. I've been saying that for months, that we sell ourselves short if we say we got to emphasize red ball over white ball or white ball over red ball. I mean, you know, Australia have been good enough to do, you know, I think that stat from Andrew Strauss really resonated with me. I think he said in the last 40 years, England have been number one at red ball cricket for 18 months. And you think of the resources and the sort of energy and the love for the game here. I don't know. It's not good enough, is it? And so we need to find a way to be number one in both red and white. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think it has to be both. I think that should be the goal.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you. Thanks again, Rob. Good luck at Worcester tomorrow for Sussex.
Thank you.
Yeah. And well done for kind of sticking at it. It must be a really demanding job, but I guess, probably a bit like bringing up children or running a marathon or writing a book. It has a lot of challenges, but there's some rewarding moments as well.
Absolutely. And look, I've been very lucky to be involved in sport all of my life. And one thing is for sure, it's never dull. And it ain't going to be dull in the next 6 months either.